I'm joined today by Dr. Gavin Ortlund. Gavin is one of our visiting scholars here at Reasons to Believe. Gavin, an interesting idea that I have sometimes with my students is, can we learn things from non-Christians? And I know you have an interesting story about the astronomer Carl Sagan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I went to his book Contact, which is the best-selling science book in the English language of all time.
Wow.
And I wanted to just learn from that perspective. You know, he's kind of an iconic figure among more scientifically skeptical type people.
Sure.
He's, Neil deGrasse.
His video Cosmos.
Yeah, hugely influential, and lots of people look up to him as kind of a grandfather type figure in those circles. Neil deGrasse Tyson, I was just watching this morning his tribute to Carl Sagan. He's very respected. So I thought, what better book to go to just sympathetically listen to that worldview.
So you're actually intending to listen to a skeptical perspective.
Yes, exactly. I want to, Atticus Finch in the book To Kill a Mockingbird talks about how you never understand someone until you see the world through their eyes.
Okay.
And I think that's a really powerful point to consider when we're doing apologetics or any kind of dialogue, just really being a good listener. So trying to be a good listener to Carl Sagan, and I was shocked by what I heard. Because this novel, it was made into a movie in 1997 with Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster, and then it was published in 1980. So some of the things that I'm going to reference were carried over into the movie, but some things weren't.
Okay.
But there's the main character named Ellie, and she's a scientist. She's kind of a rationalist type person, and she has a conversation with aliens. I mean, the whole book is about contact with aliens.
Right.
And unlike most alien movies, the aliens are nice aliens.
Okay.
They're not trying to destroy the earth or anything like that. And her conversation with them is presented in a kind of spiritual way, where the aliens become this kind of theological force. And it talks about how her conversation gives her transcendent joy. It gives her meaning. It's the most sacred experience she's ever had in her life.
Wow.
And so she's looking back on the rest of her life, and she basically comes to the realization of it's been easier for me to make contact with these aliens than with the human beings right around me in my family.
Oh boy.
So it's like the human heart is even harder to penetrate than these distant galaxies. And that already was a surprise to me, just based upon what I was expecting. But then her rationalism is sort of critiqued through the events of the novel, because she's given no proof of this experience that she has. And so she cannot prove it to anybody. And she has to start coming to a more complicated view of things like faith and reason. And then the thing that really shocked me the most is at the very end of the book, when basically you realize the aliens are not replacing God. So even though they're taking on a kind of spiritual role, they ultimately point backwards to something behind themselves. And that happens in a couple of ways. One of them is that the transit system of wormholes that allow these different alien species to have contact, nobody knows who built it. It's just always been there. And then one of the ideas in the book is that the number pi, so if people remember that from their math class in high school or whatever, it's like the 3.14 something else, repeating.
Yes.
So he has the idea that embedded in that number is this code that enables them to build machines that travel through the wormholes and that kind of thing. And so and then in the last 3 sentences of the book, it all kind of comes to a head, and the main character realizes that standing behind both the aliens and the human beings, there is an artistry written into the universe, and there's an intelligence that predates the universe. And it sounds kind of like what I would call a teleological argument, or an argument from design. And I did not see that coming from Carl Sagan. And I found it really intriguing that even here, what it did for me is, because I don't want to speak to his intentions.
Sure.
I don't know what he intended exactly by that. But the way he's highlighting the importance of love, the importance of faith and then the suggestion of God. To me, what it did is say, scientific progress is not displacing those questions. Because even here, within a relatively skeptical framework, and in a book about talking with aliens, those questions aren't sidelined. They're only amplified. You know, they're only made more poignant and more urgent.
Yeah.
And I just find that really striking. And I think when people have the perspective that science and scientific advance is replacing questions of faith, questions of philosophy, metaphysics, I find that a little bit superficial, because the scientists and the skeptical scientists whom I respect the most give really respectful attention to those kinds of questions. And Carl Sagan is one like that.
You know, it seems, Gavin, that we often think that the Christian and non-Christian, their worldviews will clash, and there's obviously a lot of that. But we also share things in common with non-Christians: the image of God, general revelation, common grace. Do you think we should view the non-Christian worldview as a mixed bag rather than just constant differences?
It seems to me that we should. All people are made in God's image, and all people live in God's world. And so there are constraints to our thinking and to life. And I think everybody will have true beliefs that we cannot help but have. And I think it helps in issues of apologetics and evangelism to try to do the listening first. I don't think the listening should replace a dialogue and talking back, but I think the dialogue will be better if we spend time really carefully listening first.